Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. The topic for this It Came From the Network, yes I know it's going to be the beginning of April when this is released, but I'm recording it at the end of March, so we're still sticking with the March theme for this last one, and that theme of course was Happy Birthday to George. We're covering some things that I rather enjoyed. This one came up in a conversation in comments from a couple videos back with Ryan Hadley, who's been a long-time commenter, a long-time subscriber. And we were talking about WrestleManias, and he basically said, which did I enjoy better, 7 or 10? And then we started talking about WrestleMania 10, which as you could guess by the thumbnail, is what we're going to cover here. We're going to cover WrestleMania 10. And we talked about the opening match. And that's why we did it. So shout out to Ryan. Thanks for the idea for this. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, I do grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right into it. First, we start off the show with Little Richard singing America the Beautiful. And I don't want to hate on this because I do like Little Richard and I respect Little Richard. But this was a bad version of America the Beautiful. He tried to gospel it up, which isn't a bad idea. I've seen gospel versions of America the Beautiful that are great. This wasn't his best work, wasn't the best America the Beautiful. Respect for him for being an absolute legend and one of the pioneers of rock and roll music. I just didn't enjoy this. Then we go into the first match, and I'm skipping the part they showed highlights of the first 9 WrestleManias before every match, which was kind of cool. I'm going to skip over that. We get the first match of the show, Owen Hart versus Bret Hart. Bret Hart will be pulling double duty as he's going to have this match, and he's also going to face the winner of a Lex Luger-Yokozuna match later on in the show. This was a year that both Bret and Lex Luger landed on the floor at the Royal Rumble at the same time, so they both won the chance to go into WrestleMania, so they did it in a way where everybody would have 2 matches. You'll see when we get. Much like I said in the beginning of this video, this match is the reason why I decided to put this on here. This is my favorite opening match to a WrestleMania ever, and it's probably the best opening match to WrestleMania ever. I tried to rack my brain to think of another one that stands out as much as this one does, and I couldn't think of one, and this was just great. I loved everything about this. The build up to the match itself, the dichotomy of Bret, the older brother, being the more respected and more accomplished wrestler at this point, and Owen Hart, the brash young guy that just wants to get out of the shadow of his brother, wants to prove that he's on the level of Bret, that wants to prove he may be better than Bret, which a lot of people can understand and relate to. A lot of people have that sibling rivalry where they want to prove they're the better of the brothers or sisters or whatever it may be. And then you have these 2 guys that are just 2 fantastic wrestlers. For my money, I've always enjoyed Owen better than Bret. I respect the hell out of Bret. I think he's a great wrestler. I like the character of Owen Hart better than Bret because I think Owen went into different avenues and explored different versions of himself more than Bret did. Like I said, this is probably the best opening match that WrestleMania has ever had. Owen does pick up a surprise win where Bret's going for a sunset flip and he kind of just sits down on him. I thought this was absolutely awesome. I'm giving this a 5. After the match, Owen Hart gets interviewed with Todd Pettingill, basically saying everything I mentioned there, that he's out of his brother's shadow. He proves that he's better than Bret. Just perfect. And it led up to their match at SummerSlam, which was another great match in their feud that continued on through the year. It was fun. That's followed up by a in-ring celebrity. We get Cy Sperling from the Hair Club for Men, which if you're not old enough to remember, they used to have these commercials for basically hair transplants from a company called the Hair Club for Men, and the host or the guy in the commercials was named Cy Sperling, and not only was he a member, he was also a client. He was the guy that had the procedure done. They show Howard Finkel, and Finkel has full hair, which you know Fink is bald most of the time. I wanted to say, and it didn't happen here, I thought that someone took his wig off during this show, but it doesn't happen here, and it may just not happen because this is the Peacock version and it might have been edited out. But let me know if you remember that being on here or if I'm just having a Mandela effect on this. I thought someone took his wig off during the show, but they didn't. That's followed up with a tag team match, a mixed tag team match. Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna Vachon going up against Doink the Clown and Dink. The reason why this is a mixed match, of course, Luna is a woman, Dink is a little person. I thought this match was boring. I think it overstayed its welcome. I think we could have had a better use out of most of this talent in here. I think Bam Bam, Luna, and Doink are all better talent. Dink, I mean, at the time, we had already gone past, and I'm just going to say it's probably incorrect, the midget matches. We'd already been past that era, so even then it didn't feel right. I think this match had a little bit too much time, and I'll explain that in another match later that gets a very short amount of time. They could have cut this a bit. I understand it's a good, fun comedy type match. Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 2. After that, we get the Bill Clinton, which is actually a Bill Clinton impersonator, even though they don't say it's an impersonator, is in the crowd. And that, to me, is probably one of the bigger drawbacks of this show, is that the Bill Clinton impersonator, because why did they even do that? It was just stupid. Next up, we have a Falls Count Anywhere match. And, oh, by the way, I gave that match a 2. Next up, we do have a Falls Count Anywhere match. We have Randy Savage going up against Crush. This match was good, and it kind of had all of the earmarkings of an ECW style match, kind of before ECW really picked up traction. It was through the backstage, it was on the floor, there was a lot of that. And I know that we were in the era of WWF at the time, where Vince McMahon was trying to push Randy Savage out of being an in-ring competitor. But I think there could have been so much better done with Savage. I mean, he basically wrestled for the rest of this decade and was a big star in WCW. I think so much better could have been used of him here. This wasn't a bad match. Savage does pick up the win after he pins Crush in the backstage area and then ties him up so that Crush can't make the count to get back to the ring. I thought this was good. I'm giving it a 3. It wasn't great. Afterwards, we see Todd Pettingill with the Clinton impersonator again. This time IRS is there again. Just stupid, so I'm not going to cover it. Then we get a women's championship match, which I forgot again. This was another thing I forgot was on this card. We have Alundra Blaze going up against Leilani Kai. And they really had something here with Alundra Blaze. The fact that they didn't build at least a decent competitive women's division around her, and she wrestled a lot of times one-off competitors like Leilani Kai here, who I don't think was around much at the time, or her matches with Bull Nakano, where Nakano didn't stay around much. She would just be there for a couple matches and then leave, or Bertha Faye. I think if they would have concentrated and maybe got 6 to 10 women that were decent and made a concerted effort to build the division around Alundra Blaze, they could have had something special there. I think she was a great talent. This was a good match again. It was a little bit short. Alundra Blaze does pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 3. Next up, we get a backstage segment. We have Rhonda Shear, who was the host of a USA show called Up All Night. She's being hit on by the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, basically saying that it's my girlfriend. When Burt Reynolds comes up and basically steals a girl away from Shawn, which was interesting because that's the kind of thing where you expect if it happens to Shawn Michaels, he turns around and super kicks a guy. He didn't here. But again, we were kind of early on in the Shawn Michaels arc and the Shawn Michaels run, so maybe he wasn't just as fleshed out or as overpowered as he would be later on. That's followed up with a tag team championship match. We have the Quebecers, which is Jacques Rougeau, aka the Mountie, and Pierre Carl Ouellette, who becomes PCO later on. They're going up against Men on a Mission, Mo and Mabel with Oscar. The Quebecers have Johnny Polo, which within a year or so becomes Raven in ECW. And you kind of see both the talent here in Johnny Polo and the frustration at the same time. You can feel he's frustrated watching this. This wasn't a great match. Between this and the mixed tag match, these are probably my 2 least favorite matches on the card. Men on a Mission pick up a win here by a countout, which means they don't win the tag titles, which is strange now seeing that on wrestling because you know that doesn't happen nowadays. I'm giving this one a 2. I didn't think it was a great match at all. Men on a Mission, they've got some good matches, but they've got as many stinkers as they have good matches. That's followed up with some more celebrities. We have Rhonda Shear, who's going to be the guest timekeeper, and Donnie Wahlberg from New Kids on the Block, or as they announced NKOTB because New Kids had renamed themselves to try and keep up with the times. They weren't kids anymore. He's going to be the guest ring announcer for the next match, which we have Yokozuna defending his world championship against Lex Luger, with Mr. Perfect as the guest referee. Yoko has Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette with him. This was a really good match. And for the second video in a row, we get treated to another really good example of what Lex Luger could be when Lex Luger is allowed to be good. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think Luger was the greatest wrestler of all time. I don't think he's as bad as people think he is, though. In a match like this with Yokozuna, which Yokozuna is fantastic, or matches against Sting or Flair, Luger can put on really good matches when he has good opponents. This was a really good match. I like the fact that it comes to the end and Luger attacks both Fuji and Cornette and gets them in the ring, and Mr. Perfect's checking on them while Luger's going for the pin on Yoko. Luger gets up in the Perfect's face, kind of gets angry with him and pushes him, which Mr. Perfect calls for the disqualification. Normally, I would take points away for that, but for what this is, and the story it built here, I think it was good. I'm going to give this match a 4. I enjoyed this. Next up, we get the shortest match of the night. We have Howard Finkel out there, and he's being berated by Harvey Whippleman, aka Downtown Bruno. That brings out Harvey Whippleman's client, which he was managing at the time, Adam Bomb, followed by a freshly face-turned Earthquake, which, shout out to Earthquake, he's starting to get some of the love that he deserves. Some people are looking back at his career more fondly than they have been. A lot of it having to do with the dark side of the ring, where he came off extremely well. This was just a 30-second squash match where Earthquake destroys Adam Bomb, which I was kind of surprised because Adam Bomb was getting a decent push at the time. I'm giving this one a 3. It was good. It wasn't nothing much that I could say more than that. I can't say it was a great match. I can't say it was much of anything. But I can't knock it off because it wasn't bad for what they did. Like I said, I'm going to give it a 3. And I probably talked about it longer than the match was. This is where I was in the beginning when I talked about the mixed match. Maybe if they shaved a little bit of time off of that, gave some to this, we might get a better match, a little bit more competitive. That's followed up with a backstage interview with Yokozuna and Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji, with Cornette doing most of the talking, which of course was the reason why he was brought in for this. They're talking about the main event, which is going to be Yokozuna and Bret Hart, and how Bret's going to wilt because he's already lost once that night. A great setup. That's followed up by one of the most historic matches in WrestleMania history. Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels in the ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship, which a lot of people falsely attribute as either the first ladder match, which it definitely isn't, or the first ladder match in WWE history, which it's not either. There was another ladder match. I want to say, I know Bret Hart was in it for sure because Bret Hart brought the concept from Stampede. And I want to say it was him and Shawn Michaels, and it's on one of the Coliseum videos. But I might be wrong with who he's facing. It might have been him and Razor. I know Bret Hart was one of the competitors in it. But there was at least one ladder match before this. So this was not the first ladder match or even the first WWE ladder match. It's the first one that really sticks out. It's the first one that makes a big impression on the wrestling world. And even watching this now, after seeing what is now 30 plus years of ladder matches since then and different things that have been innovated in different ways that they've used this still stands up as one of the best ladder matches of all time. And they do it mostly with one ladder. There's not 6 ladders and tables and chairs and them building contraptions, which, don't get me wrong, that's good, that's fun, seeing some of that crazy stuff that happens in ladder matches, but this is proof that you don't really need all of that. You could have a great ladder match with just 2 great wrestlers working around that and using that ladder to their advantage. I mean, in this you have 2 of the premier wrestlers of the time and probably 2 of the best in-ring performers of all time. This was a really, really good match. It is my second favorite match on the card, behind the opening match, but that doesn't mean it's anything less. Razor Ramon picks up the win, which you probably already know. I'm giving this a 5. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. It still holds up. Even if you've never seen this and you've seen a lot of the craziness, whether it be the TLC matches or matches like the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers, and you've loved those ladder matches, go back and watch this. Here's another way that a ladder match could be presented, and it's just as enjoyable. After that, we get a segment where we see Rick Martel, Jeff Jarrett, IRS, and the Head Shrinkers, and AFA, and they're arguing about who's going to start the match. So there was apparently a 10-man match, which I seem to remember there was a 10-man match that was cut from the show that got cut because these guys couldn't get on the same page. My guess is the ladder match went long, and that's why. So that got cut. That leads us right into our main event. Bret the Hitman Hart versus Yokozuna for the second WrestleMania in a row. They're main eventing. WrestleMania 9. The less we talk about what happened there, the better. This is a really good match. And for both of these guys to have this be their second match of the night, and for both of them to have another good match, have another really good match, it speaks volumes on how good these wrestlers were. I mean, everybody talks about Bret with a lot of reverence, and he deserves all the great talk he gets. Yokozuna too. Yoko is one of the best big men there's ever been. He can move like a guy 100 pounds lighter, 200 pounds lighter than him would have, or as he got even bigger, 300 to 400 pounds lighter would have, and he could keep up with guys like Bret Hart, or the match he had with Luger, which was fantastic, and other matches that Yoko had. He just was awesome. He was a force of nature, and I really enjoy Yokozuna, and I really enjoy this match. This is a really fun match. The one thing that I didn't like, it comes to the very end, and Yoko's about to do the bonsai drop, but he loses his balance, and that's how Yokozuna loses. He falls off the ropes, and Bret rolls him up. I don't particularly like the finish, and I forgot to mention Roddy Piper is the referee for the match, because each of the World Championships had a guest referee, and Burt Reynolds was the announcer for the match. But I digress. I didn't like the finish. Obviously, Bret Hart wins. You probably already knew that. But I did like the match. Unlike the finish of the Luger-Yoko match, where I think it added to that story, I think it took a little bit away from Bret Hart here, and not a whole lot, but just a very little bit in my opinion. I still liked it. I'm going to give this one a... Overall, I think this is one of the more memorable WrestleManias of all time, whether it be the ladder match, the two matches that Bret Hart had, the two matches that Yokozuna had. They're all matches that anybody would put up in the annals of WrestleMania history as some of the great matches that's ever happened on the show. Out of the 9 matches that were on the card, 4 of them I think are a 4 or 5, so that really says how much I enjoyed that. There are a couple low spots on the show, and the comedy spots with the fake Bill Clinton, even trying to pretend like it was Bill Clinton, they're a little bit, I would say I wasn't fans of them, but it doesn't detract from the overall card in my opinion. And this is a card that shows some of the greatness of the new generation era. Guys like Yoko, Owen and Bret, Bam Bam, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, Lex Luger. You had other people come out at the end, like the 1-2-3 Kid, aka X-Pac, that came out at the end to celebrate with Bret. For an era that wasn't looked upon as fondly as, let's say, the Hogan era, the Rock and Wrestling era, or the Golden era, whatever you want to call that, or the Attitude era, the Ruthless Aggression era, there's a lot of really good stuff that was going on there. And I really enjoy this, and this is still one of my favorite WrestleManias. Overall, I'm probably going to give it a 5. I think this is a good WrestleMania to watch from beginning to end. Yes, there are some things that aren't that great on here, but for the really high spots, the really high points of the show, it outweighs everything that's bad in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. With all that being said, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you see where it says join, that's how you become a member. Becoming a member definitely helps out. If you made it here to the end, let me know what your favorite WrestleMania opening match is. Is it this match? Is it a different opener from a different show? Let me know down here in the comments. And stay tuned, because my next It Came From The Network, we're going to have a different theme for April, even though this video is coming out in April. So stay tuned for what my new theme is going to be. I hope you guys like it. I've enjoyed doing these theme shows for the past few months. It's really added something to my watching, if that makes sense. It's added something to it for me. So, like I said, if you enjoy these, I hope you're going to enjoy the next theme. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another It Came From The Network.